All right, I'm back. Thank you, everyone who was praying for me. I told you before this that I was going to take one day off, but I indeed did take two days of not having how to build a tent. I apologize for that. The second day when I was going to record, I just got too busy with too many different things, and it got to the end of the day where I had to choose spending time with the family or doing the podcast, and I chose the family over you. Please don't take it personally. Please don't be hurt. But we have to prioritize in these times where we're working and doing things and doing multiple different tasks and trying to do different projects. You got to make sure your priorities are in line. Highly encourage you to think about those, think through them, and make sure that yours are as well. Thank you for everyone who was praying for me. I really appreciate it. It was a fantastic little hiatus to get some things done. I cannot wait to share with you all that the Lord is doing. I'm telling you, there's going to be big things happening. Be encouraged that everything that you see is not everything that the Lord is doing. And that's something you should always keep in mind, especially in times like these. Today, I want to talk about Bezos, Zuckerberg, Cook, and Pichai. I don't know how to say his name. The CEO of Alphabet, who is the owner of Google. And I want to talk to you about the first little bit that I've seen on their Senate testimony. It's very interesting, and there's a play that's going to be run on us. We're going to get a little jujitsu move on us of counterbalance that they're going to take, they being the government, and Democrats and maybe some Republicans, are going to take the momentum from us conservatives complaining about social media, complaining about big tech like Google, Apple, and flip it on us where we are going to be in a worse situation. I want to develop that, talk about a few points that I've seen. So far, I didn't watch the whole thing. I paused it, as you can see in the background if you're watching on YouTube, which I'd appreciate a subscribe. I'm not all the way done with it, but these are important things to talk about. And no matter what else happens that I see in this hearing, this is what we need to talk about. We're part of the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Go over to flfnetwork.com, put in HGBT in a memo field. You'll get tons of great content. There are so many different things. Toby is going to be doing a series on the theology of work, I believe is what it's called. Highly recommend that. There's a limited amount of space. Go over there, check it out. Make sure that you tell them I sent you. And there's the conference coming up. You get a discount on that. Make sure you get to that because I want to meet you. I want to see you in person. This is a one-way conversation. I want to have a two-way conversation with you. I want to get to know you. I want to hear from you. I would love to hear your story and what God is blessing you and doing in your life. So please go to that so that we can meet. I'd love to meet with you and do everything we're doing. It's not going to be like a traditional conference. We're going to be fighting. We're going to be feasting. We're going to be singing psalms. We're going to be doing some great stuff. And I really look forward to that. All right. So the first thing that I want to really drive home, and if you don't take anything else from this show, take away this one thing, that in this hearing, and why I'm talking about a hearing, why does it matter? Because this is revealing the mindset and the plays that they're going to run. If you notice that the questions for almost any kind of hearing, honestly, the Republicans have one line of questioning, one point to get across, and then there's like things that come underneath it as subpoints. The Democrats have one thing they're trying to get across, and then they have other subpoints as well. And this is the difference. See, this hearing, for the Republican standpoint, their perspective, they are trying to figure out why. One, certain companies like Google are helping the Chinese and their military, not just the Chinese, because, you know, the Chinese companies are all really controlled by the communist government, the Chinese Communist Party, and why they're helping them develop their aircraft and other things like that with their artificial intelligence. And then there's the other thing where why are these American companies censoring Americans, which is really interesting. Mark Zuckerberg, who was talking earlier, before I paused it, admitted that he was lying himself. He said he didn't want to get into the business of regulating speech, but if there's a case like hydrochloroquine where some people are saying that it is a cure and it does work, they're going to censor that because it can be harmful, which, okay, then how do you decide that, for one? Two, who is going to make the judgment that a medicine is 100% effective and works? Because if you know anything about medication, one, that we don't know why medication works the way it does, and two, it doesn't always help everybody. So what is the threshold, and why do you get to determine if a medical professional is saying something that is accurate or not, or helpful or not, or harmful or not. You're not a medical doctor. Are you really going to start making medical decisions? And then the third thing is, he said that they monitor against hate speech, which hate speech is not any one defined term. Hate speech is evolving, and it always is. It's following culture. And so they get this like loophole where they say, we're not monitoring speech. You can say whatever you want. You can say whatever political opinion you want, but you can't say a Christian opinion. You can't talk about homosexuality being a sin. You can't say that they're going to hell, that those who practice homosexuality, a very orthodox position in the Christian faith. You can't say that gay marriage isn't really marriage. You can't even say that there's a cure for the coronavirus, or you can't even say that all lives matter. Those are the things that get censored. But because they say it's hate speech, they're just throwing everything in there that they disagree with. And that's the loophole that they're trying to play. So there was that kind of reasoning or the arguments that the Republicans were making. They were coming down on the social media sites for helping our enemies like China, and specifically more of the obvious restrictions and censoring of Republicans. Obviously. Now the Democrats, they are going down the line of, you guys are too big. You're not creating competition, which they don't care about. They don't like competition. Obviously, if you see anybody that's on the news that's a Democrat, they don't tolerate any opposing positions. They don't like competition in any sense of the form, not just in the marketplace, but in the ideas space, in the political space. They crush the opposing positions. They demonize the opposing positions. And that's what we're seeing. So they don't care about competition. But then they start talking about the rules and the regulations and how much market share they have. And they're trying to paint these companies as monopolies, which they are in a lot of cases, and saying that they're too big. And so that there's regulations that need to be implemented, that there needs to be more government intervention in these companies. And even Mark Zuckerberg said that he has requested that there be regulations on how they operate. Now, why in the world would a private company want government intervention? Why would they be requesting government intervention? No doubt a liberal, progressive company like Facebook. Why would they want more big government? Can't they manage themselves? I mean, I thought they were a platform. I thought they weren't allowed to determine who can be posted and who not. But apparently they can, they do, and they want more help from the government. And why is that? And there's this very simple reason. And if you've listened to the show for a long time, you've heard me say this before, but it's worth bringing up again, is big business has a best friend, and that is government regulations. And the reason is that these regulations work as a moat around the castle of that big business, a monopoly, or just a big business like Google or Amazon. And it works as a moat of protection against them, because when there are heavy regulations in a industry, in a segment, then it does two things. One, it creates an environment where small businesses can't succeed because the opportunity cost, the barriers of entry into that industry, into that area, into that segment are too high. It's not worth trying. It's not worth competing. You don't have the lawyers that have to be involved to navigate those regulations. You don't have the finances to comply with the regulations. Sometimes it takes certification. Sometimes it takes annual reporting and like all those different things. You have to be ongoing working with certain departments, certain parts of the government. And then secondly, it allows you not to have to compete based on innovation, because you don't have to be concerned with rising upcoming companies, that the existing companies in the industry don't really have to innovate. And there's tons of examples of this for so long. Luckily, some of the technology that has been invented and companies that have come out have been able to work around the legislation and the regulations, because they cannot keep up with how fast technology is coming around. But that is why the big government, the big companies like Mark Zuckerberg want these regulations. It's because it protects them from other startups like Parler or like other small social media sites or whatever business that Facebook considers themselves into or considers himself in. And so the Democrats are more than happy with this, because big business is the party of the Democrats. Democrats love big business. I know that's not how it's portrayed. That's not how it's branded, that the Democrats are for the little guy, but they're actually really for the big businesses, because the big businesses want the big government. They give the big donations to get the big government involved. And that's what's happening. So you have these two lines of arguments going on. The conservatives are upset about the censorship and the working with the enemy. The Democrats are setting it up that they're too big, that they need regulations. They have too much control over the American people. They're doing things with their data. They're not being honest with the app developers. All these things are coming out in the questionings from the Democrats. And what's going to happen if we're not careful as conservatives and Republicans, whatever you are, because not all Republicans are conservatives, is the anger and the frustration that is that is correct, that is deserved, that is owed to them for what they are doing, is going to be taken, and the Democrats are going to use it because they are usually pretty smart politically. I would have said they were by far superior than Republicans before Trump, but Trump's just ruined them. He's going to take that and say, see, we need regulations. And I'm worried and I'm concerned that Republicans and conservatives are going to go along with that and say, yes, because they're censoring us. But what's going to come from it is regulations on an industry and on businesses that is going to foster and protect those big businesses from any competition, which is going to give them freedom to do the things they're doing and continue to do things, because there's no competing places for you to go, because there's no one going to start and there's no one going to be able to thrive and compete and to grow quickly outside these big businesses because of the regulations. And so they're wanting the regulations to come in to create a silo around them that even if it costs them more money, it's still cheaper than having to fight off competitive businesses. It's still less of a headache. It's still less of a threat to have to comply with regulations than with competing companies that can perform and provide a better value proposition. It's kind of like insurance. You are paying insurance, even though it costs money, in case a disaster happens or some unforeseen circumstance happens, some unknown. You're hedging against that. If it does, you have insurance. And so that's what you pay for. And so these people are actually kind of acting like, or using the government as insurance. They're paying lobbyists. They're paying the regulation costs to ensure that no disruption happens in the industry and it comes solidified as best it can, so they can continue working and continue creating a small profit year over year, increasing, making shareholders happy. The CEOs get their bonuses and they continue to do whatever they want in their agenda. That's the little secret. And if we're not careful, we're going to fall into the trap. We're going to agree with the Democrats, even though they love this. See, this is the thing too, is these companies are so big, they will shape the election and they will try to get Democrats elected. There's no doubt about it. So nothing the Democrats do is going to jeopardize that. They are not stupid. Well, some of them are stupid, I'm going to say. They're not politically stupid, and they're not going to introduce these legislations to keep them from doing that. They don't have those kinds of ethics. They don't have those kind of standards. And so that should be another dead giveaway that whatever is recommended from this meeting, whatever is proposed by the Democrats to like rein in these big companies, to protect American people and their data, is not that at all. Is not that at all. We need to be smart. We need to be wise in this day that we are in. The civil war, this cold, warm, starting to heat up civil war that we're in. We can't take anything for granted, guys. We can't fall into the trap. We need to be wise as serpents. We need to be shrewd stewards. And we need to be faithful and wise. So we'll talk to you tomorrow. God bless.